Okay, hi guys. This is the first recording for term three, where the focus is on improving performance. It's important to notice, though, that improving performance isn't about really getting the kids to be absolutely perfect. It's about getting the kids to explore what it takes to get better at something. So we're not sports science, we're not secondary school, we're primary school, and we're looking at what it takes to get better at something as an individual, to get better at something with a little group, and to get better at something as part of a team in a traditional sports setting. So yeah, the idea, term one, if you remember, was quite prescriptive. We talked about what we would do each week and away we went. Term two was quite project based, so it was a big end sort of project that we worked towards. This term goes back to a bit more of a term one kind of thing, where I'll outline what you could do in the first 2 weeks and so on. But the last 3 or 4 weeks of the term are quite open-ended, where you put it to the students to just go for it and take some inspiration from what you've done in the first 6 weeks and have a little mini project. So it's a bit of both, if you like. So anyway, let's get screen share on, and I want to talk about assessment first. So as I say, this wiki is a new wiki. It's active improve at wiki.wikispaces.com, and there's a little description of what the unit actually looks at. It sort of combines all sorts of things: fundamental skills, game sense, and a little bit of movement skills, sort of gymnastic stuff. And ultimately the kids can choose, so they might choose to focus on one aspect or another and leave other bits out. So it could really end up anything. It could end up a bit of a ball type unit, or it could end up a bit of a dancey movement type unit. So we'll just go from where we go. I have put in a little project. If you click on your projects button, it's really just a chance for you to upload any photos or charts that you make as you go through the term. And if we can just start with a, because I think that if we look in assessment, what I've done this time, I just clicked on it and wait. What I've done this time is I've given you a blank template, which is just known as the reflection sheet, and then there's also one with suggestions. So perhaps if I open up the level 3 reflection with suggestions and have a look at it, here it comes. Okay, so this is what the page looks like. It's really for you to get an idea of what you might do when you're trying to address these objectives. So what I'd suggest you do is you print off the blank template and you give that to your students, and you print off this one and you use that to guide your reflection task or your note-taking task as the weeks go on. So the first one here, for instance, it's got the objective at the top, and then it suggests maybe that you can identify how perseverance to improve in an area can result in feelings of self-worth. Students might return to those Hawara spider webs to consider how improving affects them and is motivating. So yeah, it's not perfect, but at least it's trying to translate the objective for you, so we can talk about those as we go. So anyway, yeah, if you need any help with that, maybe just get in touch as well, and I can make little charts and things for you if you think you might need something. So anyway, let's have a look at Hangout 1, which is around individual skills. So what I'm looking to do is, for the first 2 weeks, we're going to look at an individual getting better at something, at one thing, with a focus on feedback. So when it's not like you're going to ask the individual to go off by themselves, you're going to ask the individual to pair up with someone and get some feedback and give feedback and respond to feedback. And that's really at the heart of this first 2 weeks. Following that, the next 2 weeks are going to be looking at working together, so a little group of about 5, and then the following 2 weeks will be as a little team identifying something in a sport and going from there. So the first 2 weeks looking at individual skills. The objectives are listed here. They're all C1 and B1 for every level. So B1 is just about getting better at a movement skill or a movement sequence and using a variety of equipment and just demonstrating consistency and control. So it's about doing a task. And C1 is all about maintaining and enhancing relationships, whether that's between an individual in a group, or between two individuals, or you know, teacher adult or whatever. But they're all the same for this. So what I've done is I've suggested I've split this Hangout into 2 weeks. So week 1, and I've pretty much given you a lesson plan. So Week 1, first lesson, what I'd do is I'd start with a little warm-up, and it's really not a warm-up, it's a bit of a quick, easy-to-start activity. And what I've done is I've put in a little a downloaded task cards for these 3 tasks: sock it to me, bottled, and cone up, cone down. And what I'd suggest you do is either set up 3 little stations and have the kids rotate around the stations, or you pick one of these 3 activities that you like the best and just run it as a quick, very little instructions kind of activity that you can just get in and get going straight away. So sock it to me is basically kids in pairs, one's got a sock on, each person's got 1 sock on, and you are literally just trying to take the other person's sock off their foot. So it's a little bit like a knee boxing or a wrestling kind of task. If you think that's a little bit rough, what I'd suggest you do is you put the pegs on someone's t-shirt game. So put one peg on the back of each person's shirt, and the aim is just to get around behind them and get the peg off them. So it's like a rotating kind of game. So that's kind of simple. Bottled is where you have them stand in a line of say 5 or 6 people, and they have to put a bottle between their feet and push it back as far as they can so that the person behind them in the line can pick it up and repeat the action until it gets to the very back, where the front person will have run to the back to continue. And it's just a race, it's a timed thing. How long can you go? How fast can you get from one end of the hall to the other, sort of thing. And number 3 is cone up, cone down, which is just where half the group are picking cones up and the other half are knocking them over, and they've got 2 minutes to try and outdo each other. So 5 people run around knocking over the cones and 5 people run around picking them up. They can stop and have a bit of a talk about strategy, and sometimes they follow a person in the other team and just undo the work that person's done, and so on. Similarly, sock it to me, a cool little extension if you wanted to for that is Millie, Molly, Mo and Joe, which is just where 3 people stand in a circle holding hands, and they name themselves Millie, Molly and Mo, and the 4th person is Joe, and basically the aim of the game is for Joe to tag Mo, and the Millie and Molly kind of rotate and the circle spins round, keeping Mo as far away from Joe as possible. So anyway, I wouldn't spend too long with them. I'd just get in and take 15 minutes, maybe 10-15 minutes, having a go at some sort of random little activities and setting the scene to the kids that what you're going to do is ask them to think about an activity a little bit and to focus on it and to get better at a task. Okay, so that's just a nice way to start. And it's just suggested that in the second lesson of this week, you might choose one of these activities and bring it out again, but somehow run it as a little in-class challenge where you have, whole class or knockout or teams for the bottle race or something like that. So that's just a nice sort of simple intro. But then the main bulk bit of your lesson is called feedback sessions. So what you're going to do is get the kids in pairs, send them off to do a task, ask them to critique their partner, give some suggestions, and go back again, and that sort of thing. So pretty much it says it here. Once both partners have had a turn, discuss, and you're looking at what sort of sentences, how do you frame a sentence that's useful when you're giving feedback and accepting feedback. So here's a bunch of activities. I would suggest that you pick one and all of your class have a go at it, and you might get through 1 or 2 in a lesson. Okay, so the first one is just balloons, and the idea is to just keep a balloon up in the air while staying in the same spot. So make them stand inside a hoop or something like that. Ask them to keep the balloon going to the same height each time, and variations might include using a bat or a rolled up magazine or something. Okay, if you've got slightly older kids, you could use tennis balls and tennis rackets and that sort of thing, and it's a very simple task. Okay, other than that, you could have target throwing, just kids trying to throw beanbags into a bucket, underarm or overarm, aiming to hit a cone or a wicket. Knot on is where they're trying to tie a skipping rope into a knot using their feet while they're sitting on the ground. Funny little activity, but what you can focus on that is how muscle tension starts to happen in the abs, and it builds onto balance, and yeah, kind of interesting. So yeah, kind of not as silly an activity as it sounds. There is a activity called Get in Control, which is in the booklet, Moving in Context. If you need a copy of it, or if you really want to do it, could you let me know and I'll scan it and email it through to you. there's a 2-page description of how you can go about this task. But basically what it is running, jumping, catching the ball in the air and landing in a static position. So the sort of thing you would see in netball. And there's a whole lot of questions that the students can ask themselves as they're watching their partner. Okay, dynamic stick balance is basically that you stand on the spot holding a stick like a pool cue in both hands, and you have to move the stick under your feet, behind your back and up and over your head without letting go of the stick. Okay, and then there's some basic stuff like cartwheels or log rolls or pretty much any sort of gymnastics activity that you can think of, you could ask the students to have a go at. Okay, so you send the kids off in pairs and they have a go at the task. At the end of the session, you ask the students, no, sorry, we'll go back a step, go back up the top. So you send the kids off. Off they go, they perform the task, and they both have a turn, and then they give some suggestions to each other about what they could do better. Once both partners have had a turn, you ask them to identify the type of sentences that they've used that were useful or not useful, maybe record those, record sentence stems, and then send them away again using some of the suggested feedback sentences. So they're going to keep going with this activity, but actually what you're focusing on is what's the way that you say nice comments or harsh comments or things they need to get better at. Okay, so they would have probably 2 or 3 turns. It would take 20 minutes or so just getting better at this task, and you wandering around modifying and asking the same questions, maybe spending most of your time talking to the observing partner, asking them what they're seeing and what they think they'll say and how they think they'll say it. Okay, so then when everyone's had a turn at giving and receiving feedback, you end the session asking the students what they would need to do now to get better at the skill. And so what that might, suggestions they might suggest are things like drawing little diagrams, researching the actual correct method, so getting some books out and charts, watching an expert who's doing the task and then analysing it a little bit. Just keep trying. Perhaps they can break the skill into smaller steps, but again, they'd probably have to research the correct step and then practice. Okay, and what you want to do is note that sequence, and if you can, come up with a class agreed sequence of what they would do, and then that's sort of like your little golden rule book that you're going to follow for the next wee while. Now, depending on the way you run your class, that would be the end of a lesson, or you might get 2 of these done. You might work through that. So for instance, you might send pairs off to work with balloons and stop and give feedback, and off they go again. And then they come in and they talk about what's needed to get better. You might either do 2 things. You might swap partners and keep the same task, or you might join the groups slightly bigger, so you've got peers watching peers and that sort of thing, or you might roll out a completely new activity so that each peer does 2 activities. But really what's important is the little list that they come up with at the end of the lesson on what it takes to get better, and what the partner needed to know in order to give good feedback, and they may not have known enough to give good feedback on this first session. Okay, so week 2, roll it all out again. Again, I'd start with that little game again from the first lesson. Pick one of those things and have another go, or just dive in if you didn't feel it went that well. But usually kids like to play things more than once. Okay, so here's a little introduction. It's called Thinking About Jumping, and if you click on it, it's from the curriculum and action books, and here's a learning sequence that really, if you just work your way through it, you'll have quite an interesting little start. It's all about jumping and jumping on one foot and landing on another and connecting that skill to the bigger game, and just sort of gets them thinking a little bit about when the skill occurs and why they might need it. So quite a nice little thing just to begin your session. Okay, then the main part of the lesson, what I would do is introduce a skill. Now just pick one that you know well. So maybe something from volleyball. Kids are always doing volleyball things wrong, swinging their arms around all over the place instead of just bending knees and so on. So passing a soccer ball with the inside of their foot or throwing at a target. Okay, so the whole class is sitting around. You've had a little demo. Ask a few students to come up and model it, and then try to break the skill down with the class. So get them to identify how it begins, talk about how the body is held, the position of the body, the shape of the body, where the eyes are, where the target is, and then what's it like in the middle, and what does it look like at the end. And then you want to create a little memory prompt. So discus is always, or shot put's always got that sort of stuff. Athletics is good at it, where they talk about dirty palms, clean cheek, that sort of thing. So what would create any sort of little vocab that your kids will remember, and then have the students work together to practice the skill. Okay, so off they go into pairs again, just practicing the skill, quite traditional sort of lesson. But then stop the class, insist on them sitting together and providing feedback to each other about what they're seeing. Okay, then have the students demonstrate in front of the class, get a few kids up, and then get the class to identify the feedback. Okay, was it the same feedback that the peer gave, or is it different now that the teacher's really watching and the whole class is watching? Okay, now you want to bring up things like discuss how praise might be phrased to be believable, encouraging, and valuable. So it's not written on here, but what I would do here is split your class a little bit differently and have, if your kids are in pairs, have say 2/3 of the class out in the middle of the hall working, and another third just sitting around the edge of the hall, and you're going to walk around that third while they're working, and you're going to ask that third to think up comments and phrases and things that are positive and can be fed back to the worker. Meanwhile, in the hall, the partners are thinking about, you know, just general comments, but we want to start talking about how can you praise someone effectively, you know, without being ridiculous and over the top, and what sort of sentences work again. Okay, and what I would do to end this whole session is end up with a list of, again, positive phrase sentence stems, but also you'll have a chart of some kind that you've created for the skill, where it's the skill's been broken down, and you've got that on a poster page or something like that. And you might ask you know, one of the arty kids in your class to draw little cartoon characters next to some of those prompts, and then save that for later on. But then what I do just to keep things fun is to end the session with a knot-on race. So remember, the knot-on was trying to tie skipping ropes in a knot. I'd try and have a bit of a competition of that. So just put them all out in the hall. Everyone goes for it and run some sort of little silly activity. Or a game of Stinger. If you remember in Hangout 1, you can actually click on it and get the instructions if you don't remember. But just end with something fun. If you have looked at target throwing, Sting is a really good idea to play right now because it connects to that task. If it was passing a ball with the inside of the foot, you could actually play Stinger with soccer balls and kicking it to each other. But if you just want to, you know, have a go at something like knot on, it's just a bit of fun. But what you're really illustrating to the kids is that you want to keep coming back to things, because repetition and going over is really part of getting better. Okay, so then for your second lesson of that, or second week, I would just repeat the same session, choosing a different skill or keeping the same one, but you might want to explore an app called UberSense, or just the idea of recording each other on video and using that video to help analyze the skill. So yeah, a suggestion is you could use Broken Bridge instead of an introduction, instead of going back to these jumping activities. Broken Bridge is a card that was part of Hangout 1. Actually, I'll link it down here in case you haven't got it. Broken Bridge is just a jumping task. It might be a nice, easy introduction task, or you could set up Broken Bridge as a I'm finished early kind of task. If the peers have worked together on a skill and they've used UberSense and they've analysed it and they've just keep going, you might have Broken Bridge just across the side that they could play, and that's easy. So then you'd end the lesson by listing the things that help you get better, and now we're starting to talk about technology. We're talking about breaking the skill up. You could start using the word chaining, which is really what we're talking about when you break a skill into smaller skills. You could discuss how things make it more possible to talk with a partner. For instance, if you've got a little video and you're both looking at it, it might be easier to to make a comment when you're both looking at it than if you didn't have that video prompt. And then similarly, how would it be without these systems or these types of sentences? And just pose a hypothetical. What sort of comments would be made, if you didn't have some sort of little structure? Okay, and just a suggestion to go and have a look at the verbs on the assessment sheet. So let's go and do that. So here we are again. We'll go into level 3 because most of you, I think, are largely from level 3. So we've talked about this one about students might return to the Hawara spider webs. So get that spider web out from term 1 and just get them to put a tick or a mark on their physical, social, emotional, and sort of purpose goal, the way they felt throughout the lesson. So that, say, today blue pen is dated week 1 and so on. And to be more comfortable giving and receiving feedback. If there's a really low comment on a low mark on a spider web, get them to write down the bottom of the chart, which part of the lesson made them feel that way. Okay. For the B strand objective, students should describe the process and progress they made to improve their abilities in an area. Okay, I wouldn't really worry too much about that, other than perhaps you'll get a few photos today, and at the end of this 2 or 3 week session, you can just get them to write a little comment underneath about what they found good or hard, or maybe get a peer comment below the photo about how they did and what they got better at. Okay, so C1, that's this week's lesson, this week's stuff. C1, identify and demonstrate ways of maintaining and enhancing relationships. Well, they'd want to list all the skills that they've used, things like giving and receiving feedback, or paraphrasing the feedback they've been told, thanking each other, thanking people for their comments, thanking each other for letting them be observed. If you get observed, often you'll thank the person who's come to observe you, but the observer should also thank the person for letting them, especially if you're a slightly older class. The skills of taking turns and being reasonable, not hogging the time, and sharing the duties, not just always getting the best job. So that sort of thing. Okay, and then again, explain how the process has impacted on their friendships and their abilities. So explain, get them to really identify that once we've made a chart with a system such as have a go, stop and talk, have another go, stop and talk, that sort of system, whatever your class actually comes up with, get them to realise that little chart or that process gives them permission to be critical or to give praise and comments, whereas without that chart, perhaps in a lunchtime, it would be a bit weird just to give comments like that all the time. Okay, and D1, perhaps we'll just leave D1 until we hit it as part of our next Hangout. Okay, so we'll leave it there. Okay, I'm going to, oops, not sure what that is, we'll just shrink that out of the way for now. I'm going to go back to Hangout 1 and upload a copy of Broken Bridge in here. Down here somewhere if you want to use it. So hopefully this sort of makes some sense. The first 2 weeks is about peers, one watching, one performing a task, giving and receiving feedback, and really coming up with a list of sentence structures that are useful, and also coming out with a little system or a routine that's useful, such as try the skill, stop and give feedback, try the skill again, stop and give feedback, go and find out the correct, they will come up with a list that seems like a sensible routine for them to work through. Keep it quite simple, maybe put it on your class wall, try once, try twice, try third time. So, play, feedback, play, share, something like that. Nice and easy. So anyway, I hope this all sounds pretty useful. This recording will go under Hangout Recordings. The unit overview is there, and the full year's assessment is there as well. Okay, if you've got any questions, get in touch with me at morgantim111@gmail.com, and we look forward to seeing how you go. Thanks very much.